Hello guys and welcome back for another Aeternum video. This will be episode 3 when it comes to war explanation provided by me, and of course today we are continuing our topic related to the groups, as there are 4 groups that we still didn't discuss, and those are the Dex groups, like we like to call them in Europe, and for the NA players I believe that they are calling them killer groups. But in just a second you would see why we have specific names for them, and of course the name is, corresponding to their location on the map and so on. But before going to the raid planner, which is extremely necessary and helpful in this case, I want to just go over the different groups, their names, and of course the most important, what they consist of. And after, when we check the groups, we will also speak a little bit about the DPS. As last time we just mentioned that the DPS is not really playing on the point with their teammates, but they are kind of playing separately, or let's say floating into the battlefield, as they have a, I would say like a filler kind of role, as they can assist different places on different timings and so on. So without wasting too much time, let's go with the groups. The group 7 is called Palisade, as they will be playing on the Palisade. Group 8 is Bonfire, simply for the same reason. And then we have Group 9 and Group 10 as inner and outer Dex groups. Now, as we can see, currently the meta is extremely melee friendly and heavy, and therefore you would see a lot of melee players in the most of the enemy rosters. Like, there is really lack of anything else than melees. And when it comes to melees, there is a lot of variations. You can go for heavy loadout, you can go for medium loadout. Of course, the heavies are mostly used for disrupting your opponents, being a heavy crowd control bot, so you can stop the enemy healer from healing their teammates. You can also go for a medium DPS kind of melee, which is mostly used as a void blade or a spear, and so on. Like, there is a lot of potential, a lot of variations, but mainly the meta is technically down to the melee classes. This of course doesn't mean that there is no mages, this doesn't mean that there is no bows and muskets, but compared to previous metas and compared to previous war rosters and stuff like this, it's way less. Now currently I think we are playing with around 5 to 6 DPSs, range DPSs, and everything else is basically coming down to melee. So, like I said, if we go group by group, we can see that each and every of those groups would have at least 2 heavies. Usually one of those heavies is playing directly on the healer, and they are technically called CC bots, meaning that they have a lot of crowd control abilities. Their goal is not to kill the healer on their own, because that's probably impossible, but their goal is just to disrupt the healer, to make him lose their ground, to kind of retreat a little bit, or when he starts to cast heals, you can technically stun him or knock him down, or do something like a stagger, so you can interrupt this healing process, and then eventually he would lose his teammate because he didn't heal the teammate on time. Of course, if you manage to put a lot of pressure on a healer because he's ignoring you for too much time, then you can chain your crowd controls, and you can ask a teammate, which in this case would be a medium melee player, or let's say a range from the DPSs or whatever, or somebody would just see it happening, you don't even need to call them, and then the healer probably can even die if he is not really aware of what is happening around him. The other melee, which is another heavy, like I said, is again in the form of a forward pushing, let's say, person who is either trying to get more space for his teammates to cause some disruption, either try to lock on an enemy DPS player. It could be also out of their group. Now, if we are looking at group 7, mostly the Palisade fight is technically 5v5. But if there is a DPS group that is assisting the Palisade group, this heavy melee can definitely go on a mage or a musket or a bow player, just so they can cause a little bit of disruption, and therefore that's technically their job. Now, when we go to the medium melees, it's a bit less complicated, or even more complicated, depends on the skill level of course and the understanding of the player. But the medium melees are, imagine them like floating melees who are always trying to be on the correct spot at the right timing, which means that they want to go and assist a heavy just so they can finish a kill. I will give you a couple of examples later on when we look at this plan, because I already have it prepared. And then usually the fourth person in such a group, in the recent history, it was always reserved for a range player, just so the range player can follow up with damage on the necessary targets. But like I said, the meta has changed quite a lot, and currently it's not even worth it to slot a range player. Like if you slot a range player on those groups, you basically lose a lot. Like you are hurting yourself just by doing it. Even if you put a medium or a heavy, it doesn't really matter. It would always have more value than just having a range player. So that's why most of the people are opting to go for a melee player instead of a range. I put here still DPS or melee, but melee can also be a DPS. So that's why I'm just clarifying it for you. And then we have technically the same identical thing for all of the groups. Now this is, like I said, all 4 groups are considered as dex groups or killer groups in NA. And this is almost identical, if not identical, on all of them, with of course small exceptions. Now if we move to the raid planner, like I said, today we will be discussing and drawing a little bit more than before, because I have some things that I can show you. Again, guys, this is from my understanding and my experience and knowledge. If you think that something is wrong, or if you think that something is not like this, please share it down in the comments. We can have a proper discussion. We can see if I'm making a mistake, or maybe I didn't say something correctly, but there is always a different perception of the things. So if we can start a really nice discussion with this, and you think that I'm wrong or right for something, it would be super nice to hear your thoughts as well. Alright, so group 7, as mentioned in the raid plan, was a palisade. Now this whole area is the palisade area. This is just between the fort and those rocks formations here. So this is an extremely important place of the map, which we always want to control if we are attacking team. And if we are defending team, we should definitely try to not give the enemy this area for free. Now, I would not go into details again about why we should not do this, because we will do this probably on the next episode when we speak about key points of the map, like different rotations, key points of the map, specific tricks and things that you can use and so on. But remember that this area here is extremely valuable. Like it's not like there is an area which is not valuable, but this one is extremely valuable. And then we have, so this is palisades. This is the bonfire, as you see already maybe. I've put here a small text so we can know what is it. Unfortunately, I don't have a red looking fire here, but that's technically the bonfire. And group 8 is usually playing on that spot. Of course, playing on that spot doesn't mean always here. You can kind of go in behind the bonfire, reset your fight, and then come back in. Or maybe directly come here, but then you have to be careful with the point and so on. And then we have the 9 and 10, which are the inner and outer decks. Now, probably it's a bit more clear why group 9 is inner decks, simply because it's closer to the point. And then we have outer decks, which is a little bit further than from the point, and so on. So the idea of those groups is, of course, different from the idea of the previous groups that we discussed last time, which was the point groups. Now, they are not visible, just for a clear picture. But ideally, on this setup, and it doesn't really matter what will be the setup on a different war, because as I said, usually the layout of the different maps outside is a bit different from the terrain, but ideally people are playing the same way on last points. It could be on this one, it could be on this one. It would always be the same, of course mirrored, but still. And then people are not really playing for last point B. Like this is probably 1 out of 200 wars would end up as last point B, if they are of course serious wars. So ideally, those groups, like I said, are trying to, to apply pressure. The hardest fight is basically on group 7. I will go one by one on the groups and I will tell you what their idea should be. So group 7 is having the roughest fight ever, simply because all of the respawns that are coming to this point are coming from here directly to the point, and every single, let's say 20 to 30 seconds on average, they would be having people crossing by. Which means that if you are 5 people here and you are fighting the enemy's 5 people here, as soon as you get a kill or you get a nice push, you would not have more than 10 to 15 to 20 seconds time where you need to look for extremely big value, because if you cannot find it in those seconds, there will be respawns coming which can sandwich you in. Like, imagine that this group pushes and gets into here, and then the respawns are coming and they basically get smacked in this place here. They would all die, and this means that you would lose the whole pressure that you just won. Now, of course, you don't want to always stay here and just go back, but the most common thing of an attacking group 7 or palisade group, when they win a couple of kills, or even one kill is already a big win, is ideally to jump down and to try to help group 8. Now, the reason for this is quite simple. First of all, if you jump down, you instantly get more numbers on the fight of group 8, and we're gonna see what is their idea, so you would see why this is the most logical thing instead of pushing the road. And then the other two core things are that if you drop down, you're instantly behind those rocks. So the respawning players at first would probably not even see you, or even if they see you, they would not have a direct contact with you. And then the second thing is, if you drop down, and even if the enemies decide to like go for you, you can just wrap around and come back in, ideally straight away. Like, you don't lose time, you don't lose tempo, you are still on your spot. You don't lose all of the pressure that you gained because you are simply on the same spot with like 10 meters of walking. So that's why if you are group 7 and if you are winning your control over palisades, the best solution and the best extension to that winning is just to go down to group 8. Now, if we look at group 8, on the other hand, like I said, the bonfire group, now this, we can kind of look at it from a different perspective. Some people prefer to play it a bit more passive, meaning that they kind of put an imaginary line on the bonfire. They try to play like up to this line and a little bit more, let's say up to here, so they can keep all the opponents that are trying to penetrate this line, and then they are creating a safe haven, let's say here, for all of the healers and the DPS players of the attacking team. Now, if this is a group 8 that is playing for the healers and the attacking team, I mean the DPS of the attacking team, they would be playing super passive, and here it would be kind of always a fight. But with this, you are not really winning much. Like, you don't lose as much, but you also don't win that much. So I would say it's a bit of a coin flip, and maybe in the long run it would not really benefit you, because if you are not providing too much pressure on the enemy backline where their healers are, then this means that eventually almost nobody will be dying on the point. You are just giving it all to the point players to decide who is winning. So that's why I don't think that this is like the better strategy. Of course, it is a strategy, but it's not the better one in my opinion. So what you can do as a group 8 is to have at first really tight connection with group 7. What I mean by this is you want to have either like a direct line of contact, that you are in the same comms, but let's say you are using TeamSpeak, you can use like whispers and things like this. Usually people are using that for wars. And then if you know that they're winning their fight and you know that they would eventually come for you, you can go extremely aggressive and you can try to, you know, match your numbers here and to push for this small area here around the rock. Why around the rock, I will explain in the next video when we speak about the key positions, but this is one of the best positions to have as an attacker or defender, and this is an extremely, you know, important piece of the map when you want to, you know, win. So one way to approach of a group 8 is definitely not going like this, because you are extremely visible, you are really close to the point, you don't really have too much gap here between the bonfire and the point as well. So you are extremely easy to be countered. If people just use their AoEs here or just put a shower, they can definitely slow you down with so much and you would lose so much of your life. So you want to have people kind of splitting apart. So if we imagine that this group is trying to play aggressive, we would want to have, for example, one of the heavies to go like this, then one of the heavies to come like this, then we want to have one of the guys to come from here. So you have like different points of entry to this like choke point, And again, same as group 7, you don't want to extend further than this line here. Like, technically, when you are stepping on the road where their healers are, you are already like on the limit. If you continue further, there is a really high chance that the enemy can turn around on you. Like their matching groups here, for example, they can turn around on you and they can lock you in and kill you before you can manage to exit. Like it's extremely important to not die. Like, of course, you don't want to play always for 0 deaths, but at the same time, you try to avoid as much as possible dying. So this road here is kind of the limit. You don't really want to like push to here. And of course, we are talking about like identical skill level of 2 war rosters. If one team is way better than the other, then you can do whatever you want. And again, if your group is winning, for example, you want to get value, but this time the value is not like group 7's value, for example, dropping down to you. You don't want to get up to group 7. Of course, you can do it occasionally here and there. Like, for example, let's say that they have free casting DPSs here, assisting their group 7. You can definitely like come and push those away so they can maybe retreat to here, or maybe they can retreat to here. But ideally, you want to get a little bit of value. Let's say you got a kill, so now you have 1 extra person, and this extra person can kind of go to the edges of the point and look for someone potentially exiting on low HP, look for potentially another healer that is free casting, or a healer that is from the point groups and so on. So this way you technically get value by having an extra person. Now if we go to the other side of the point, because this is one side of the point, now we have to look at the other side of the point, which is groups 9 and 10, the other 2 dex groups. Here, it's not much different. Technically, if we put like a, again, imaginary line, which is, let's say, somewhere in the middle, group 9 wants to win the space after that line. Group 10 wants to win the space after that line. Every time when they get a kill or they have the free time, they can always look towards the point. Before, when we had the ranged users, like let's say you have a fire staff in this group, the fire staff was consistently looking towards the point when they had the freedom. But like I said, now it's not really worth it, because a fire staff can be pushed by a single melee and he can be neutralized completely. Like 1 melee can just make you quit the game, and that's why like having a ranged is extremely difficult. So even with 3 or 4 melees, how you get value is if you push enough. You don't even need to get a kill, but getting a kill is of course ideal. If you push enough, you then send 1 person, or even 2 if you have the time, to just look for people around the point. Now those people can be bruisers going out of a clump, let's say on 20% HP. It could be an IGVG buffer that is also, let's say, low HP. You can definitely kill him. You can see a healer that is free casting or just trying to, you know, get cheeky with it and so on. And one extremely important thing here, because maybe people think, oh, but wait, the bruisers are kind of beefy, no? Also, the IGVGs are also super powerful. They should be able to survive. Well, the thing is that those classes, they are extremely powerful and extremely tanky, but the bruiser is mainly running with fire protection because of the fire staffs that are bombing. They run slash protection and they run strike protection. Not many bruisers have high thrust protection. And those classes that are running in 9, 10, 8 and 7, or all of the dex groups, are using a lot of spears, a lot of heavy attacks of the swords, and a lot of void gauntlets. So all those 3 types of damage, I mean, the heavy attacks of the swords are not doing slash damage, they are doing thrust. So the thrust damage and the void damage is so powerful against those people on the point, simply because the main damage there, it's not any of those 3 types. So that's why killing them, it's relatively easier than if someone from the point is trying to kill them. Now, when it comes to this line again, if we have to discuss it a little bit further, Group 9, if they're winning, like I said, you don't want to get on the road. You can still do it, it's not like impossible to do it, but if you get to here, ideally you want to be sure that you are winning this fight, and if all the respawns come, eventually you would have to kind of go back. So ideally, I would say that playing up until this point here and having an impact on the road and on the point at the same time, it's probably the better choice. You don't really want to run up to here. Same as for group 10, you don't really want to get in here. You want to push your enemies here on this line, and then of course try to help group 9 if possible, because that's your closest group, or of course try together with group 9 and look for the point. Now if we imagine, and I just want to make that permanent so I can show you what I mean, if we imagine that all 4 groups are winning, we can just put, like, for example, this group is winning, this group is winning, this one is winning, and this one is winning. You can see that this point, okay, maybe with the drawing would look a little bit strange, but I will just cut it like this. You can see that you are leaving the enemy in such a tight corner to play, like such a tight place, that there is just no chance for them to do anything. It's extremely easy to kill people when they just have this small amount of space to work with. And if you remember in the previous video, I was talking about this like tight places where a lot of people are clumped up together, that it's not ideal on the point. Well, technically outside of the point is almost the same thing. If you all clump together in this small area, you would just get obliterated in a matter of a second. So that's why as a defender, you definitely want to try to not let this happen. Now, if you lose people, if you start losing players and you are feeling that you are losing the hold of this, you don't want to run in a straight line to the point, because this is one of the key traps that a lot of people are falling into. Yes, the point is ticking. Yes, I need to be there as soon as possible so I can de-tick it and we don't lose it. But if you all run in this straight line, you are basically going into a death trap. It's better to just reroute yourself a little bit. Try to enter from different places, try to get the attention of your enemies so they can kind of try and chase you, and therefore you would be a bit more split, so not everyone can be clumped together and getting killed. And then we will not speak about the inside fort, because like I said, there is a lot of different strategies. Maybe we can do it in a separate video, what other things can be done, but one thing that we still need to discuss today is the DPS groups. Why I'm calling it groups when we have here the layout, the template of the whole roster. As we can see, the DPSs are not in a group all together, I mean. They can be 5, they can be 6. Mainly, to be fair, they are 6, but here on this template I just put 5. But you can always consider them as 5 or 6. So those DPSs, I've mentioned already a couple of times that they're floating people, which means that they're always going from one place to another, and so on and so on. In the current meta, we technically have 2 groups of 3 fire staffs. The one group is called Bonfire Trio, and the other one is called Dex Side Trio. Now, what does that mean? Is that we have one group of players which are playing together with the Dex, like 3 mages. Imagine that this here is 3 mages. And then we have another 3 mages here with the bonfire group. So those are the 6 remaining DPS people. Of course, you can have 1 melee and 2 ranged, or 2 melee and 1 ranged, but then it's a bit harder for the melees, and I think that having the ranged is a bit better. So what are those people doing? Why they are not playing with those groups like straight up, or why they are placed in the other groups with the bruisers? Well, that's the thing. When you play ranged and you know where to stand and you know how to kite and you know that your, melee players are decent enough to keep the front line for you, you don't necessarily need to have a group for a healer to heal you and to non-stop taking care of you, because the healer should be responsible for the 2 bruisers and the IGVG in the group. If we take, let's say, group 3 for example, you see that this healer have to take control of 2 bruisers and 1 IGVG to keep them alive. If he has to look after you as a fire staff, this technically means that those 3 guys who are standing on the point and they are taking a lot of damage would not be receiving enough heals, and this means potentially that they will probably die more, and this would technically lose your advantage on the point. So that's why all those like DPSs, they are playing on their own, like I like to call it, and they are kind of grouped up together and they try to play with different groups. Now, why I'm saying different groups? Because if we look at the bonfire DPS trio, for example, this one can be placed here to just do, for example, damage to the point, or to assist group 8 with their damage, right? For more pressure. But it can also be placed with the palisade group. Imagine that your palisade group is really suffering, or the enemy DPS trio is also here. So you need to match them in order to create, a balance. Because if your palisade group is fighting another palisade group plus 3 DPSs, there is no chance for them to win this. So you need to come here and match, because this group would just get pushed back to the B point, and then they are completely out of the war. So that's technically the reason why I'm calling those DPSs floating people, because they can be replaced and they can be moved anywhere on the map depending on the current situation of the war. And this is kind of on the fly, because a lot of people, of course, are communicating, and if they see something happening on the enemy side and they need to adapt to it and quickly change, they would just give comms between each other, and they would say, okay, you guys come with us, we change a little bit because we cannot really push, we cannot really penetrate the defenses, and therefore we are just wasting time. The quicker you react to such situations, the quicker you adapt, of course, it's better. And that's why experience is a key component of this thing. For your result, of course, is also like extremely important. But in general, this bonfire trio is playing in between those lines here, behind the bonfire, in front of bonfire, together with group 8, for example, like this, or together with group 7 on the palisades. And they are mainly assisting from the back. If your DPS is playing in front of group 8 or in front of group 7, something is wrong, and you should definitely check on them, because those guys are ranged and they should be playing behind the melees. They can always go in front and assist with, let's say, Ice Shower if they play with Ice Gauntlet, or a Scream if they play with Void Gauntlet, but they should never stay for too long in the front line, simply because they will die in a couple of hits. Now, if we look onto the other side, it's probably already clear for you what exactly those other trio is doing, because even that the name is different, it's technically the same thing. Those guys are looking for value, and this value can be in 3 different ways. The first one is to play on the back of the point and assist with damage on the point. Let's say you're looking for value to do damage on the point and kill people. The second value is to push with group 9 on the inner deck side, and to get value as well to kill some enemy dex players, or maybe just push them in the back here in the small place that I showed you earlier. Or probably the least favorite one is to go with group 10 and then push for value here, so you can kind of push those enemies from this place to come here, and then to combinedly go with group 9 and just push them all together at once. But ideally the situation is not much different than the other. And again, you can even call those guys to go with the bonfire. You can even send your 6 DPSs here, but then you need to be really serious and really sure if those 2 groups will be able to hold. Because if you can imagine that you send 2 groups here, 2 DPS groups I mean, and then 1 DPS of the enemy is here and they manage to kill your people quicker than you, then those groups would lose completely their position and their pressure. And then you are technically playing a war like this, of attackers and defenders, and then it's kind of a coin flip. So yeah, but this is, like I said, this is basically on the fly. There is a lot of different variations, there is a lot of different outcomes that can happen. And of course, this is a call that has to be made by either by the main shot caller, either by a, let's say, second or a third caller, which is on the groups, and so on. And yeah, it's complicated. But yeah, that's basically it, guys. Those are the last 4 groups that we had to discuss from the war rosters. I hope that you are getting more and more information with each and every video. And like always, please, if you have any questions, hit me up, ask me. And of course, if you think that something is wrong or I'm missing something crucial and important, please let me know, because I really don't want to give false information to the people. In the next video, we will be talking about the different strategies, the different war plans that the current meta is using, of course. And we will see also really cheeky spots and really nice places where you can technically trick your opponents but also gain a lot of value. So definitely look out for those because it's extremely important to get the pressure over your opponents. As always, thank you so much for watching guys, and I will see you on the next one.